behind me. It's just the dog. All right. So we are live Wednesday, September 7th, 10:01 a.m. Central Standard Time and 11 o'clock a.m. for you. Patti Hupp joining us from Florida. Thanks for coming on to talk about Title IX.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we'll give people, a minute or so to hop on. I know that you are from the Midwest originally. You've traveled all around. So I did put in the promos for the broadcast a little bit about your background. But why don't you just share, some background on your experience with sports and being a coach and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up around sports. My dad was actually a football player for Notre Dame High School in the Chicagoland area. So I just grew up with that. A dad who had 3 daughters was always encouraging all kinds of sports. I played basketball, I played volleyball, I ran cross country, and I ran track and field, starting when I was 12 for cross country and track and field. And I'm still involved in that now. I feel old, but yes, I'm 45. So yes, I've been involved in it the whole time, whether I was a coach or an athlete, or most recently, I was the track and field / sports events manager at a world-class track facility in Louisville, Kentucky. So I've been around sports my whole life, so I'm very, very familiar with it. I'm very, very familiar with the advantage it has been for me as a woman, my older sister Jessica as a woman, and my younger sister Kelly, who did D1 athletics herself. It's just been huge, and how far it's come. As far as running goes, women used to not be allowed to even run in the marathon. I don't know if anybody knows the history of that, but women started just jumping in, and people would try to pull them off the course. I mean, that's just so insane to me. And now the participation in the marathon for women is just astronomical. So that's how far we've come. And so leading into this conversation, the thought of going back to anything in anything like that is just sickening to me, to watch what we've done. So
for sure. And so, the whole concept surrounding Title IX and why people are talking about it is, and you can look at this graphic for people who are maybe new to what this is and what it meant. So before Title IX, only 1 in 27 girls played sports. And through the passing of that, now that number is 2 in 5. And so it really improved opportunities for female athletes. And the reason people are talking about it now is that the Biden administration is looking to, through the Department of Education, revise what Title IX means. And basically, it's threatening females in sports. That's the long story short. And so the implications of this could be disastrous for female athletes. And there are public comments being submitted to the Department of Education, and we will have a couple links after this broadcast to share with you, because the deadline is Monday, September 12th. And so we want people to share their thoughts. If you're coaches, if you're parents, if you're an athlete yourself, this will affect women in sports. So how do we save it? So I wanted you to talk a little bit about your experience as an athlete, as a mom of athletes. You have 2 daughters and a son, and also as a coach and manager. Why don't you talk about your observations of females in sports versus males?
Yes, as specifically your question is, what's your specific question about females?
So just what have your observations been? I mean, let's just say this. Have you ever had any females that you've coached want to be on the male team? Okay.
No.
So talk us through that. Why?
Never. I think there's just an overall element of pride association with being a woman and being able to accomplish big things as a woman. One of the phrases that has been accepted over time is like a girl, right? And we've tried to change what that means, but I don't know that we have, right? Even a dad saying to a son, "Hey, you throw like a girl." What is that? Why is that allowed? Why do we say things like that, right? And so it kind of has always, even still currently, people still say that. You run like a girl. Why are you doing like a girl? And so I think there's just a sense of empowerment. And look, I'm not this big, huge, women should be in charge of all the world and get rid of men. I mean, there's nothing like that. Like, I'm not a real big, huge feminist, but I think that we should be proud of what we've accomplished, and they are. Now, if one of my female athletes beats a guy at something, like, that's cool. You know what I mean? And it happens. I don't think it means that we should merge the sports together. And I can talk a heck of a lot about that, but there's something proud about that. I coached at Tremper High School in Kenosha, and you know how many records we took over that time, and it was female records. They were never looking at the boys' records, right? Because it was something they had for them on their own. The thought of combining that, I think they would find offensive.
For sure. And, I know that with Leah Thomas being, a transgender male athlete, still biologically a male, competing in
Yes.
women's swimming. And, he came in, I think it was 500 something in the male category for swimming, and then became number
Yes.
one when he entered as a female, quote, female swimmer. And so this
Yes.
is just a glimpse into what can happen at any level of sports for females. And so I'm curious if anybody's watching, share this and tag your friends who have women in sports in their family, or if you're a coach, and just share some of your comments and concerns from the perspective of, what could this mean for your daughter, for your sister, for your team? It'll affect a lot of things. It will affect scholarships. It will affect opportunities down the road.
Yes.
So why don't you talk to us about some of the top athletes that you've encountered in female sports with track and cross country?
As far as on a world level?
Just any stories you have of, what it meant to those athletes to compete in their class as women in sports.
Yeah. So even my own daughter who runs for she runs for the Coast Guard Academy, actually, which I'm super proud of, to be
You
able to
should
have
be.
the importance of that. But, and again, just per my point before, I mean, and so proud to be able to do that as a woman. She never considered men overshadowing her in any way, but to the point even about the male swimmer competing as a female athlete. You look at, and shout out to UK, honestly, and that's hard for me to do because my younger sister went to University of Louisville, and I'm not supposed to shout out UK ever, but shout out to the UK female athlete that stood up against that, and that's really where we need to go, right? Females are not standing up. They're not, and I'm not trying to degrade females for not doing that. I understand that they feel like there's a loss there if they do. I've asked male athletes before, why don't you sit down at the line when that happens? And they say, well, we know the truth, or, I would know that I really won even if I got beat. But it's more than that, right? You are losing something there. And you even look at that picture that you put up on the screen that if we want to talk about the biology there, the physical difference there is absolutely insane. And I'm not saying there aren't large females. I mean, I've seen some. I mean, look at the WNBA. I've seen some impressive female bodies before that are bigger than some men, right?
Right.
We've seen that before. But when you're talking about they're getting the benefits of testosterone all the way up to that point, and to pretend that we slow that down or whatever, that's going to take anything of that away, take away their lung capacity, take away the smaller hips, take away the musculature, take away the fast twitch, take away any of that. That's just not true. I mean, it's just not. And so I do think that women have to step up a little bit and say, no, we have more pride than that. We're not going to race in this because it's not okay. But the problem is, even though I really do believe that the vast majority of Americans are not okay with this, I really do believe that. I can't, any percentage I would give, I'd be making it up. But I really feel like it's a high percentage who aren't okay with this. And the reason why we don't think that that's the case is because that's not the loudest voice, right? It's just not. So where does the loud voice need to come from? Women themselves. And the problem is, and I can tell you this for sure in coaching, it's a risk, right? You could say, my husband said, well, you're kind of risking something, right? By going on there, you want to go back to college coaching, that people are going to see you as a problem. Well, you know, I don't
Right.
know. I guess then they do. Surely I'm not the only coach who thinks that. So if it means I have to come on something like this and then people say, "Oh, okay, I can stand up for that too," then that's fine.
Right.
But that's what really needs to happen, because I don't really think I can stand. I can sit here and pretend that I'm a doctor. I'm not. My younger sister's a doctor, and we've discussed this a lot. I mean, but there are just some biological facts that I just don't think are that arguable.
Yeah. No, I
I
agree. And I think that this is where people do have an opportunity to elevate their voice and concerns. So whether your state has, for example, a high school sports association or a statewide organization,
yeah,
appeal to them, call them, share your concerns, talk to your legislators, and please give public comment regarding the proposed amendments and changes to Title IX through the Department of Education. The federal comments are being submitted right now, and the deadline is Monday. So this is a way for you to elevate your voices. And what do you think about this? What about the opportunity for coaches of male sports
for sure.
to speak up and say, look, we know that the majority of our athletes would, absolutely crush their female, counterparts. And shouldn't they
Yeah,
come up and say, hey, try out for a team just like everybody else? Their
yeah.
voices could be impactful too.
That's absolutely true. I think male voices are very impactful because males understand their bodies and really what they'd be able to do on the female athletic side. I talked to you earlier. My son is he's 6'4", he's 185. You can put him in any sport and he would just be ridiculous, right? And he's a semi-professional disc golfer actually right now. But he did volleyball, track, basketball. He can jump about 6'5", 6'6" in the high jump. And if I don't know who knows anything about track on here, but any male coach even also will tell you that would win a world championship.
Sure
So
would.
could you imagine me, encourage my sons to say, you know what, you could go get a world championship, hon. Just go, let's do it. Let's bond together. We both love track. Why don't you just go capture a title? That doesn't make sense. It really doesn't, and it's really common sense. I mean, almost the conversation almost doesn't make sense because really it is common sense. And like you said before, when we talked separately, like, where is common sense right now? We can take this out of athletics too. I mean, this is an athletics conversation, but
Right.
women, just speaking to women directly, guys, we will lose we won't just lose athletics. It's, Title IX, we will lose everything. I gave you the Jeopardy example, right? So like Jeopardy is a
Yeah.
show that we love to watch, as a family. Right now, the top score in all Jeopardy for a female is held by a male, folks. And whether you care about Jeopardy or not, like, we can't even have a game show record. I
Right. Right. Right.
mean, the same logic, and I don't think it's a straw man's argument. I'm serious. Following the same logic, um, can't I do that? I mean, we actually have. There was an article a couple weeks ago I read in Australia.
Oh, yeah. No. No.
Litter boxes in the bathrooms. What's happening?
I know,
Um,
yeah, and the furries. The furries.
yeah, I mean, so that's
I know.
just, I mean, it won't stop if we don't draw a line. And I thought the line was kind of drawn at men and women and animals and humans, but it's not
Right.
right now.
Yeah, I know. We've gone overboard here, haven't we? In the name of really weaponizing the word inclusivity. I say it all the time. That word's
Mhm.
been weaponized, and now it's causing harm. So, Mandy, thank you for showing the website. This is what it would look like. We'll share these two links. So this is one: Our Kids Are at Stake. Say no to the twisting of Title IX. And so that's an easy way to submit comments. And then there's another one that we will share both of them. Um, But then, yes, Casey asked this question. What do you think of this question, Patty? Why don't they have a different category altogether for transgender athletes? They could form regional and state teams. And I know that Caitlyn Jenner, who is an Olympian, has come out in defense of women in sports and said that biological males should not be overtaking female sports. What do you think about a whole separate category?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. Right now, so just to clarify something as far as categories go, transgender athletes, and then there's actually another category of athletes who were born with male and female. I'm
Like the
hermaphrodites, but there's a term. If anybody in the chat can think of the term, I don't know why I can't think of the term for that type of athlete. If anybody can think of that, that is a different situation. And if anybody knows who Caster Semenya is, she's a track athlete. That is a different category altogether. There is definitely a conversation to be had, but we're talking about biology. That's how they were born. So that is something I have a lot of compassion for. Maybe that's a different conversation on a different day, but that is, just to be clear, when we're talking about different categories, that is not those athletes. Okay. That being said, a transgender category, when you think about it, what that would mean is, if it's just a transgender category, it means you would just have men and women running against each other. But if you had a transgender women category and a transgender men category, it's basically a men's and women's category. I mean, yeah. at the end of the day, isn't that kind of what it is? I mean, it's just men running as women and women running as men.
Yes. Yeah, I get it.
You know what I mean?
It's like redundant. Yeah.
Yeah, it is redundant. So it's just, you're switching what you're calling it. So, okay, I guess.
Right.
I mean, so yes, I guess it would solve the problem for the rest of the people who are having common sense and not have to worry about that. You know what I mean? So, but ultimately it turns out to kind of be the same thing. But really what this is leading toward is the combining of just athletics, right? It just will become about ability altogether.
Right. Yeah.
That's really what it'll be. So, I'm a runner. Can I beat a lot of men in the marathon? Well, yeah, I can.
Right.
So, does it just become about, just if you're elite in general? But no matter what, in that case, if we combine men and women, men will still rise to the top, right? We have to compare apples to apples. You have to compare the elite against the elite. So in track and field, for example, the top male cannot beat the top female, not in any event across the board. And so that's a comparison you have to make.
Right.
So when you're allowing men to come in and crush records, what is it, weightlifting, where the weightlifter came in and right away crushed all female records, doesn't that tell us something right off the bat? I mean, records is all history. And then a male saying female comes in and destroys all female records. Well, that's kind of your answer right there a little bit.
Right. And this is, Caitlyn Jenner, who's a very famous transgender former Olympian athlete, chimed in on the Leah Thomas drama and said she was born a biological boy. She was raised as a biological boy. Her cardiovascular system is bigger. Her respiratory system is bigger. Her hands are bigger. She can swim faster. I mean, that sums it up. It's nothing against the life that Leah Thomas wants to live. It's just talking about the very real reality of how there is literally no competition between him as a biological male in a category for women in sports.
Right. Yeah. And there's a danger too, I think, that's presented like in locker rooms, in high school locker rooms.
I was going to just ask you about that. Yeah, it's happening already in bathrooms in schools in Illinois where,
Yeah, it happened in Kenosha. That made Kenosha, the district I worked in, that made national news, how they were trying to get that approved, and Kenosha put up a big fight. I don't really know where it is. I don't live up there anymore, but I don't know where that's at right now. But at the time when I was coaching there, I was ready for that. I really was. For men to come into my locker room, there would have been a loud voice about that, because those girls, my athletes, As their coach, I want to protect them. And that's a dangerous thing. And none of those girls would have felt comfortable with that. They shouldn't feel
No,
comfortable with that. Parents should not feel comfortable with that. They
right.
shouldn't. But not a lot of people were saying too much out loud, and that's kind of
Yeah.
scary.
I know. Yeah, people have to find their courage. And as a team of female athletes, as a team of parents, as a team of coaches, I understand it's not easy to be that one-off, but they can't throw arrows at all of you. So speak up and defend. Say you defend women in sports. Casey mentioned the thing about hormones, and this is actually a really interesting discussion. So obviously, with, for example, the Olympic athletes, they have to do drug testing, right?
They do.
And they are often checked for steroids.
Hmm.
By default, a biological male that is trying to compete in women's sports is almost the equivalent of a woman trying to cheat with steroids, right? There's a
Yeah.
reason why it is essentially eviscerating the fairness in the competition.
Yeah, so there's actually a female athlete that is now banned, I think, for 7 years, because she tested positive for a substance that's actually found in pork that she had eaten unknowingly. It was this type of pork, whatever, but she was banned for it. And this is a female. And
Wow.
so you look at a professional athlete who is now sitting out for 7 years. I think it's Shelby Houlihan. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's who it is. But
Okay.
she's out right now. Now here you have these other athletes who are taking drugs, essentially, who are actually violating the rules. And just the very idea that just this therapy is what makes someone on equal level with the women, like I said earlier, that doesn't change anything about lung capacity,
No.
about
Right.
structure, about the X, Y, the chromosomes, any of that. So why are we pretending that? I don't get that. I mean, I just think that right now, this country, by definition, defines men and women, whether they want to admit that they do or not. I mean, I just feel like it's something that has to go to the Supreme Court, and you force the Supreme Court to define it by science. And I just don't think it's a hard thing to prove scientifically. But I don't know why nobody pushes it that far. I just don't get that.
Right. I know. And you're right. It probably will end up there if this passes. So this is the Heritage Foundation. Sarah Parshall Perry lays out a pretty good commentary on the concerns with the proposed amendments to Title IX.
Mhm.
And so the key takeaways are summarized here. A dangerous rewriting of the rules sacrifices the safety, privacy, and equality of girls and women to appease a pet policy agenda unsupported by necessity. It will install a heckler's veto at schools that are federally funded by forcing students, teachers, and professors to toe the line on a woke sexual orthodoxy. And the recent draft of Title IX regulation from the Biden administration removes the religious protections without providing any justification for the proposed change. So that's
Yeah.
really important for, the parochial collegiate institutions or high schools where this could maybe be a threat to their sports programs.
Yes, absolutely. We were actually at a college visit. I won't say which one, but recently with my daughter, it was a private school, and we asked that question. And this was a Division II school, so they're NCAA, so technically under the NCAA, not even technically, they're in the NCAA umbrella of their rules. And we asked, what would you do in that case? And they said they absolutely would not allow it. I don't know what the NCAA would say about that, but they do. This is a religious school. They have a constitutional religious standing there. So there are some exceptions that private schools do apply for, so that they can get that, so that those kinds of quote discriminations, and I'm putting that in quotes, but are allowed, so that they can do that.
Right. And look at
But
what Melanie said, Patty, the last SCOTUS nominee couldn't even define what a woman is. I mean,
I know, right? Yeah,
that's why we're in this situation. We've gone off the deep end with no
yeah.
common sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a good time to bring it to the Supreme Court, Melanie, just who we have in there. I mean, I think it kind of bodes well, but I think the case would have to be proven scientifically, and I don't think there is one. Nobody has brought the scientific case about what defines a woman and what defines a man. I think there are a fair amount. I think the majority of doctors would say that they could easily define that.
Sure.
It's not that hard.
So the four chief problems is outlined in this Heritage Foundation article is really interesting. And Mandy, you bring up the point about the kids' school lunches. So the violations of Title IX affect the dollars, right? And so it's kind of similar to what we saw with COVID mitigations, where if schools didn't follow certain expected mitigations, then they could lose perceptively their funding, right? So it's kind of like I think it's a game of bluff, but it's meant to coerce, right? And so what does this mean for American schoolgirls and young women if they change the definition of sex to include gender identity? It means that any K through 12 school, college, or university receiving direct or indirect federal funding would have to open its bathrooms, locker rooms, housing accommodations, and any other sex-separated education program or offering to someone who is biologically of the opposite sex.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they're saying it's to appease a pet policy agenda unsupported by necessity. It ignores the extensive congressional record on Title IX's purpose and the law's specific provision of separate spaces to protect the privacy and safety of girls and women, those for whom the law was passed. I would imagine this is a liability nightmare for institutions facing this proposed amendment.
Oh, it definitely is. I mean, then go ahead and put forth the push for let's include race identity then and see how that goes, because you're not going to be able to have your cake and eat it too, right? Because the race piece, right, would kill that argument on that side, because now you would destroy the minority population. So let's do that. Let's push for race identity and add that in and see the logistical nightmare that would create, right? So they think that's going to be the end of the line, but if somebody would just be willing to say, okay, let's play the game. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be this and I want you to protect me. How about we allow 30-year-olds to identify as 15-year-olds? How about that? And the problem that would cause there. I mean, there's just really no end to, it's nonsense. I mean, it's absolute nonsense.
I know. Yeah. And so the new rulemaking on sports is an empty promise. The education department is likely to find that there is discrimination when faced with Title IX discrimination complaints by so-called transgender athletes every time.
Yep.
The proposed rule will eliminate due process protections for students accused of sexual harassment or sexual assault. That's a very interesting one, too. After thorough consideration of over 124,000 public comments in a response to a growing crisis of sexual violence in education, the department under the previous administration issued the Title IX rule in 2020 that clarified that sexual harassment, including sexual assault, constituted unlawful sex discrimination. So that was a very important provision, but President Biden's proposed rule will roll that back. It will rescind the 2020 protections, leaving schools with a, quote, guilty until proven innocent presumption for those accused of harassment or assault, virtually guaranteeing the wrongful punishment of innocent people. So that's extremely worrisome. And we live in a very litigious society.
Well, that recently happened. This isn't with schools, but it recently happened, that story at the YMCA.
In Washington.
Yes, that older woman who
in her 80s
saw a male, right? Watching little girls get undressed, and what happened as a result? She got kicked out of the Y.
Yeah.
I mean, what is happening? And that kind of went away. Why did that go away? I mean, that but why aren't people completely fighting for this woman? She was trying to protect these children. He was looking at her. So we're losing that, right? We're losing our safety protections,
We are. And what's sad, Patty? I mean, and I think about this often as a parent. I hate to think that it's honestly going to take something really violent and horrible and criminal before people wake up. But then it's too late.
Yep.
It should never get to that point. We're seeing it now, right? Like we're seeing the commercial for what could happen, and people still aren't doing anything. Like we have a chance to stop it before this movie starts. Like, please speak up and support people when they're trying to defend common sense and keeping our communities safe, our kids safe.
Well, the sad part is I can't even tell my own daughter who now homeschools, because I'm not, we don't deal with any of that garbage. We just don't. I'm not interested in any of your, CRT or the bathroom thing. I'm just not interested in any of that. But, even if I go to a workplace to work out, I can't even tell my daughter, oh, go ahead and, just go get changed in that locker room. No, let's go home. Let's just go home and get changed, So that's really sad. A women's locker room should be a safe place for women. I mean, it's just kind
Absolutely.
of a no-brainer. I mean, I can't even go to a coffee shop and not see a sign, for a
Mhm.
symbol that is like a man, woman, question mark, XYZ, whatever is on the thing. We don't even have that. So
No,
we're
and I do think it's important to recognize, because I've heard this in Illinois, where some girls are identifying as a boy and they go into the boys' bathroom. This is happening in a middle school of a friend of mine,
Yep,
and there's a group of boys who are understandably uncomfortable.
of course.
And don't forget, they have urinals, and they're far more exposed than girls' bathrooms, which are all stalls. But it doesn't matter. I mean, there is nothing sacred anymore for the privacy of boys and girls, and this is in school. And you
Right.
know what the parents were told? Well, that girl needs to be given her space, so your boys can use the gender neutral bathroom. So we're
Unbelievable.
accommodating people and coddling, and nobody would deny if that person wants to go through whatever emotions they're going through. But why are we having to have all of society, you know, adapt to this? This is a very real
Yep.
problem, and I can see it being litigated endlessly. When really it's not. It's just essentially it's not fair. And I don't like to use that word because I'm not big in like total fairness across the board. Life is tough. You got to compete, but this is insane.
Sure.
This is insane. And so those poor
Yeah,
boys.
I mean, yeah, I can tell you my son or my husband, I mean, if they walked into a men's bathroom and there was a woman in there, I mean, they would just, I mean, they'd leave the bathroom and then, now you're trying, okay, let's drive to this next store so we can find a bathroom. I mean, before you know it, I mean, if we take this to the nth degree, I mean, then men can't be comfortable now going to the bathroom and neither can women. So now bathrooms are only for transgender people.
Yeah,
I mean, that
right.
doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. And, I just, and in Virginia, they had a situation with a boy dressed as a girl and went into a high school bathroom and ended up raping a female student. And, it shouldn't get to that point. Why are we, why are we playing it so, why are we doing it? Why are we doing this? Why aren't people talking about it and facing it and confronting it?
Well, the thing is too, as you mentioned that story, like it's not like we say, well, just something bad's going to have to happen. Well, actually, something bad has happened.
Yeah, it
Like
has.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
time. So like
Yeah.
you mean something bad has to happen 1,000 times or
Right.
2,000? What's the number that something bad has to happen? Or does it just become, well, I guess the girls just have to be more careful.
Right,
And not now
and
we're letting
Melanie's
girls do being
right.
raped in the girls' bathroom.
Melanie's right, Patty. They did try to cover that up. You know, they
Of
yeah,
course,
and that poor family.
of course.
And I know there are lawsuits involved. John saying billions in funding, Pritzker, Getty, and the elites are pushing the new hedge funds, which will be global, not just here. I mean, I know some people kind of glaze over when this concept of like the elites come into play, but I get it because when you do follow the dollars, particularly as we've seen in Illinois, the passing of SB 0818, the National Sex Ed Standards, and now Chris Rufo outed Lurie's Children's Hospital in Chicago, which is very much tied to the Pritzker family name and the funds they've donated,
Yep.
sent school districts PDFs encouraging them to bring gender ideology into the classroom and into the schools. And so we wonder why the federal administration is pushing this. The dollars that are attached to the gender ideology of basically indoctrinating these kids to be so hyper focused on sexual identity, or excuse me, gender identity. And we wonder why we've gotten ourselves into this place. You're right. Follow the money. There is an agenda, but we have to be the barrier, the common sense barrier between what's.
Well, and
Yeah.
the bigger issue, yes, this is in schools. Yes, this is talking about kids, but it's not just there. It's in the workplace.
Yes.
I mean, my husband works for a major company that is forcing, trying to force gender training, right? Talking about, pronoun name tags, all of those kinds of things. I worked at a very popular coffee shop, very popular nationwide. And when I, not naming any names, but they approached me and told me I needed to be using proper pronouns. Well, I just went right back at them and said, well, if you want a religious suit on your hands, we can go toe to toe on that. And they were done, right? Because that's where it becomes that, right? So like, no, you can't force me to say
Compelled speech.
that red is blue when it's not. I mean, that's just, you can't do that. So if, too many people bow to that, right? I don't want to lose my job. Okay, well, I mean, I don't, it's real. Is that real? I have to recognize that that's
Right.
real.
But did
Some
you
people
lose your
lose their
job when you said that?
I did not.
So
I did
there you
not.
go. That's the success story.
But they knew me well enough to say, I'm not playing, go ahead and fire me, because my next step will be my lawyer's office. That national brand company does not want that. I can tell you
Right.
that.
So real quickly, I'll read this conclusion bit from that article. With its new Title IX rule, the Biden administration is pursuing a radical agenda and proposing a change to our laws and to our educational system that will do irreversible and long-lasting harm to women, girls, the wrongly accused, our faith institutions, and freedom of speech. With such a transformative proposal under consideration, it's imperative that citizens take action to defeat it. So we've talked about this, right? People can do public comment. They can elevate their voices as coaches, as families, as athletes. And so, they have a toolkit there. Under federal law, the Department of Education is required to take written comments from the public into consideration when promulgating, am I saying that right? I'm going to say proposing a new rule of any kind. The public comment period on its new Title IX rule closes on September 12th, which again is Monday. So this is timely, Patti, isn't it? To really inform people, share this with your children's coaches, whether it's a boys team or a girls team, and say, hey, what can we do to defend women in sports? Elevate your voices, make some phone calls, send this Facebook Live to 10 friends, use the Heritage article, whatever you think will wake people up, because the clock is ticking and we need to save women's sports. Did I miss anything else in the chat? Anything else you want to add, Patti?
Just that really, I mean, the key is kind of the comment John Rockefeller talks about the masses. The masses believe this. So where are the masses? That's what we need. People believe this. Americans don't think that men can be women and women can be men. I truly, truly believe that. It's not about conservative, Democrat, whatever. That is not going to further our country in the right direction, whether we're talking about sports or not, children, adults. It really doesn't make a difference. And so if we would just have even 25% of the people who believe that stand up, it would make a lot of noise. So be the louder voice. I mean, I think that's what the key is here.
That is the key. And so there are some ways, after we wrap this up, we will share all the different links that we've mentioned. So we'll share the 2 different ways that you can submit public comments. You're welcome to share this Facebook Live. And yes, be sure to put the docket ID. Okay, so Mandy is giving us some tips and tricks to submit the comments. So Mandy, we'll put all of that into a post and make sure that people have it. But please share this and wake people up. Let's save women. Let's save women's sports. And so, Patti, tell us about your kiddo. You're going to be doing some college visits, you said.
We are. Yep. I have 3 kids, and my last one is a senior. And so we're taking a visit down to Palm Beach Atlantic University.
Awesome.
So headed to West Palm tomorrow. So super excited about that. So in that college search, we've been looking for colleges that do stand for the right things. And so when you're looking at that with your kids, encourage your kids to go to a place where they stand for what is right. I mean, that's super key, not just in athletics, but beyond that. And I happen to be a follower of Jesus, but you don't have to be to stand for some of these things. You really don't. Right. It's really about, it's about right versus wrong. I mean, it really is.
That's right. Well, good luck to you as you guys, check out colleges. It's such an exciting time. And
Thank you.
Melanie, very good point. All the people you see on Facebook with girls who are training and playing their hearts out and are proud of their accomplishments need to get on board. Absolutely. And rely on your community. Let Awake Illinois know what we can do. Check out your chapter nearest you. But we're happy to support these ladies in sports. And so we welcome all voices.
Yeah, and one more thing, coaches, don't be afraid to give your athletes a voice. Really, don't be afraid of that. They deserve to be able to hold on what they have done as women and represent that and not lose that. So be that person.
Be that person. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Patti, and thanks to everybody that tuned in. Have a great rest of your day, and submit public comment. Elevate your voices. Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.